I was thinking at some point we need to record an episode in German.
No.
It can be like a 5-minute episode. It doesn't need to be longer than that. But
It doesn't make sense. Like
some
how much of
point
our audience is German? Have you checked the analytics?
I check it all the time. Americans are winning right now. The Americans seem to love our show, and that's good to know. And the Germans are second.
Include like Spotify and such?
No, YouTube is just way too big for Spotify to make a difference, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I was just teaching up until like 5 minutes ago, so I might sneak in, inadvertently a couple of German words. Let's hope not.
All good.
You good to go? You'll do the
Yeah.
same. Let's do it. All right. Hello there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Mujmo.
I'm Asmora. I'm Twiper.
And this is episode 31 of The Town Center, your podcast dedicated to all things Age of Empires. In today's show, the new and controversial DLC, The Three Kingdoms, is out. So it's time to give our first impressions on the content and also have a look at how well it might be performing in terms of sales. Well, it's not really the first impression, but you know what I'm talking about. Then the Warlords 4 mini event just around the corner, and later in the show, we'll be joined by Chrazini. He's one of the administrators for Warlords 4, and we'll ask him some tough questions regarding some of the controversy surrounding the new maps. If you enjoy our show, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you prefer to listen to us on Spotify, don't forget to rate us 5 stars. All right, Orion, I don't think in my life I've ever spent so much time looking at graphs and charts and I don't know what else. I was in close contact with Flu's World. You remember we talked about him last episode, and I really thank him for indulging me in this kind of research, because we were trying to figure out how is the DLC performing, in terms of sales, and what metrics can we look at, what makes sense to compare, and so on and so forth. And there's been a lot of back and forth between the two of us. So I'm going to reveal to you and to the viewers what my research has shown me. And please ask me questions, because otherwise I'm just going to be rambling, and that does not sound nice. So here's what I got. You'll remember that last episode we claimed that the DLC, the pre-sales for the DLC, were the best in the franchise ever. And by the way, that was factual. That was not speculation or anything of the sorts. Today, things are going to be a lot more speculative, but so the question for me then was, were the sales going to be able to keep pace with the pre-sales, right? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is no, they were not able to keep pace, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So this week, you're with me? You're still with me? Please do let me know. You're with me. Okay, so this week, a very important metric has been released by Steam, which is the weekly top sellers list. Mm-hmm. And this is important because we can look back at this weekly top sellers list. We can look back, years and years. So
is that global?
Steam has options for global, for the Chinese market, for the Chinese team, Taiwan's team, and all of that. I mentioned China and Taiwan because I did look those up too. And so we can compare how all the other DLCs performed in the week they were released and compare the numbers, right? So here's what we have. Lords of the West, in the week it was released, ranked 31st. So that was the 31st most sold game in Steam Global. Then Dawn of the Dukes ranked 48 in the week it was released. Dynasties of India 53, Return of Rome 54, Mountain Royal 65, Three Kingdoms 71.
Okay.
And then Victors and Vanquished and the Return and Chronicles didn't even make it to the top 100. So you hear this and you think, well, that's bad, right? Rank 71, it's actually the worst one from the ones that actually have multiplayer civs. Not so fast. This is why. Out of all these DLCs that I've just listed to you, all of them, or most of them, were only able to rank the top 100 for 1 week and 1 week only. There are 2 DLCs, though, that had such strong pre-sales that even in the weeks before the release, already placed in the top 100 of the most sold. One of them, you already guessed, that was the Three Kingdoms. Mm-hmm. And I bet you have no clue what the other one was. I'll be so surprised if you do. You know what was the other one?
Dawn of Dukes.
That's incorrect.
Damn it.
Return of Rome.
Ah, okay.
What do you have thought, Return of Rome? Because people seem to have very
I'd
bad...
forgotten that existed.
Well, I didn't mention it before, but there you go. It's probably because of the Vietnamese player base, maybe. Maybe we did get some of those guys,
But how does all these, PlayStation 5, Age of Empires was released for PlayStation 5.
Right.
And there were bundles there where the DLC was included when you buy Age of Empires 2 for PlayStation 5.
That's correct. We're not even considering Steam numbers. And that's the crazy thing.
PlayStation.
Sorry, PlayStation.
Yeah.
We're not even considering PlayStation numbers.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing, because all of that comes on top of what I'm talking to you about, right? So only 2 DLCs in the history of the DE's life cycle were able to place 2 weeks in the top 100. And as I said, that was the Three Kingdoms placed number 51. And this is crazy. So in the week that it was announced, it placed number 51 in the top 100. And this is crazy because that's already higher than some of the other DLCs performed in the week that they were launched.
Yeah.
Right? And then you add to that the fact that the Three Kingdoms also placed on the top 100 in the week that it was launched. So 2 weeks, which... so then the question, it's definitely true that the sales were, the sales on launch week were worse than some of the other DLCs. But the question is, were the pre-sales so incredibly nuts that if you combine everything together, that still amounts to, one of the highest ones? My feeling is yes, but whether that was the most sold or not, we'll never be able to know, of course, unless Microsoft
they tell us. Yeah.
Unless they tell us and they decide to reveal everything, which I don't think it's very likely. But I think alone the fact that you have a DLC that was able to place for 2 weeks in the top 100 is already very much telling that this was a very well-sold DLC, in my opinion, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say. Whether it was the most sold, we'll never know again.
By the way, I checked as well. I was checking like the mods when I had updated the patch and everything. And once again, I saw like the new main menu had like 900,000 downloads.
Almost like, 1 million. Almost 1 million. So it looks pretty safe to me also that speculative number that we thrown. I think the first time we considered it was in the episode with Dave. So quite a long time ago. So 1 million. And I don't even know if that includes PlayStation numbers. Do the guys
who
play
have
PlayStation?
A mod center?
Yeah,
where
I don't know if they have the
install...
same. Yeah, I don't know if they're downloading the same mod or whether they have a specific mod for console. I don't know, but if yes, that
does Microsoft Store share the same mod center? As...
Microsoft, I'm almost sure they do. Flus World told me this. I get this guy is crazy with numbers and crazy good with numbers. Okay, so a couple of more metrics that I looked at. One of them, it's sort of objective as well, which is how many people did we have playing the game after the DLC was released in the weekend, which is usually the highest, right? So the highest peak of concurrent players on Steam that we had on the Saturday after the game was launched, actually I was expecting Sunday to be the highest day, but it was Saturday, was 32,000 people playing. That was the highest peak of concurrent players on Steam. And that's the biggest peak that we had in 4 years. Last time we had a higher peak was in April of 2021. Again, pretty much, peak of COVID pandemic and all of that. The 30-day average player count was also the highest since January 2021. So again, this all indicates a lot of people are playing the game right now.
Excluding, again, PlayStation.
All of this excluding PlayStation. The reviews are pretty bad. Yes, this is the 3rd worst reviewed game on Steam. Only which one are the worst? Return of Rome and
from Age of Empires DLCs.
From Age of Empires, not in the whole world. Not in the whole world. No. Well, another point. Now that you mention it, Age of Empires, the DLC, Three Kingdoms DLC, placed first for 2 days straight as the most sold DLC in the whole of Steam. So if you think about all the DLCs that were being sold, Three Kingdoms was the most sold for 2 straight days, I think. So I think only Return of Rome and Victors and Vanquished had worse reviews. And again, you can interpret these numbers, Orion, as you want. I mean, if you're someone who does not like the game, you're going to say, well, see, everybody hates this DLC. If you're someone who likes the DLC, you're going to say, well, it's being review bombed. So I don't have an answer, of course. So.
I opened Steam now to just have a quick look. Current reviews are mixed, which means
53%, I assume. That's what I had last time.
The numbers exactly, but like what I'm seeing, like some of the people that are not recommended it, it's the same. Like they're shifting away from traditional gameplay. Heroes implemented the ranked, this and that. So it's the same criticism as before. And yeah, I mean, essentially the review section is just a repetition of everything that's been said on Reddit and by people that are in favor and people that are against.
I guess. I mean, I don't think that looking at the reviews is a good metric for whether the DLC is selling well or not. But it might be a good metric for feeling, whether people are liking the DLC or not. That might be the case. I think it's just too early to tell because we knew it was going to be review bombed.
I think for sure as well that way more people that are unlikely to give a review normally are inclined to go and give a review on this one because of how strongly the community has reacted to this.
Possibly. I can see that totally happening, but I can also see, I mean, it's not impossible. I can see this being a weak DLC. You know, people were excited for it and they try it and it's just not good. It's possible. I do not know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I do not know. So my conclusion, just to wrap up this part, and I've talked a lot, so I hope you balance things out later on in the Warlords part.
I like to listen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. My conclusion here, this was pretty certainly one of the best DLCs for Age of Empires 2. I don't know if it was the best sold one or if it was close to being the best sold one. I don't know. It's pretty safe to say that it was one of the strongest one, just simply by virtue of the fact that it placed in more than 1 week in the top 100. If we include PlayStation numbers, which again, I have no clue how big that would be, but that was only going to boost these numbers, of course. Yeah. And I think, I have the feeling that folks sort of, push this to the side. Oh, PlayStation, who cares, But there was a lot of promotion from Microsoft's part about the whole PlayStation release. So I do believe there's a lot of money and interest riding here from Microsoft's part when it comes to this PlayStation 5 release. And was it 2 days ago, there was a statement from World's Edge, the first one ever since the DLC came out. And I'm going to read it to you. Did you see it by any chance?
I believe I saw it, yeah, but I don't remember the words. Exactly, so I'm gonna get a refresher from
You're gonna get a refresher, yeah. So I've noticed that whenever I'm quoting, I speak way too fast, so I'm gonna slow down. So our goal remains to preserve the experience you'll love while looking for ways to grow Age of Empires 2 so that you're able to continue to enjoy this game for as long as possible. If there's stuff you love, please tell us. If there are things you hate, please keep telling us. We hear you. The gameplay you love isn't going anywhere. So everybody, I have the feeling everybody's also going to read this in whatever way they like. Some guys are reading this as in, we need to keep making more noise. They're listening and we need to keep making more noise. The part to me that stands out is the first sentence. Our goal remains to preserve the experience you'll love while looking for ways to grow Age of Empires 2, to grow. I think this is a very important part so that you're able to continue to enjoy this game. If the game doesn't grow, Microsoft's not going to be around for long. I think people need to keep this in mind. And this very much feels to me, this DLC, I mean, it's not a secret or anything of the sorts. This is a push to, get bigger on the Asian market, Chinese market, and all of that. And by the way, by the metrics that I saw, Age of Empires 2, the base game ranked number 1 in Taiwan before the game was even released. Goes to show that they probably achieved that goal.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have talked about this numerous times at this point. For Age of Empires to continue to get DLCs, patches, development in general, it needs to sell DLCs. Mm-hmm. That's the one way they're making money right now. So it just makes sense. And sure, they could go the safe route and just continue to release 2-3 new Civs that everyone knows about every couple of months or a year. But I like that they're trying to innovate. Of course, maybe the hero additions were a little bit too far, at least for some people. But still, innovation is always good. And we have a lot of new mechanics now in terms of the units that were introduced as well. So maybe we'll see that trickle down to certain other Civs as well. And I think, as with everything, this is a thing that's gonna, once it's properly settled, I think people will be fine with the way it is. And I know people will say, again, I've read some comments on Reddit now and then, if I ever give them praise about the DLC, it's Viper's being paid by Microsoft anyways. It's I wish.
I feel like I've just went through a rite of passage. I've been accused of being a Microsoft shill. I believe all of you guys, all the content creators, have seen this at some point. Yeah. So I was feeling left out. So I'm happy I finally got a little bit of that. But sorry. This is so funny. I posted that on Reddit, not on Reddit, on Twitter. Mm-hmm. That the base game made it to number 1 before it was even released, and the Age of Empires account on Twitter, what do you call it? Retweeted me. It retweeted. Say, oh man, fuck! Now people are really gonna think I'm a paid shill for Microsoft. I'm not getting any money from them. Yeah, confirmed. I'm not getting any money from them.
Yeah, but that's weird. For how much have we not criticized the game and all its flaws, and then suddenly we're not overly negative to a thing that certain people are very negative towards, and suddenly we're being paid. Ignoring all the negatives we have been spouting and saying before. But yeah, on the statement that you read out earlier, I think it's, again, a clear indicator of how they are approaching it. It's we need the game to grow, but we are listening, right? They are listening to what we're saying. And I noticed that as well when we're giving feedback in the Discords, Forgotten Empires Discords. They definitely hear us, and they take in our feedback into account. But obviously, they're not going to go along with everything we're saying. And neither should they. Just because we have opinions doesn't mean we're right. So, again, I think I think we should still consider ourselves fairly fortunate that the developers are so ingrained into our community and actually listen and take part in discussions. And like we had a decision, he shows up on Reddit now and then, makes a comment there and here and there. So
and he comes to our podcast. I don't think this is necessarily expected behavior. I'm really glad that he did that. One point though, and I think this is where the criticism from Reddit has a lot of merit. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I definitely see, and you already talked a little bit about it. Which is how much is too much? Every single DLC we have new stuff, right? And some people are going to claim that this DLC probably pushed the boundaries further than they have done. So how much is too much for you? I'm not sure I have an answer for myself, so I wonder if you have an answer for yourself. How much is too much? How long can they keep doing this and still claim that they're making content for Age of Empires 2? I see this critique a lot, right? And I think it's legitimate.
Well, I feel like this was on the limit in terms of like how much new stuff and different stuff they did, right? I don't think if they do another patch with as many different and unique things as this one, I feel like maybe we're doing too much in that case. So yeah, this one was maybe, for my taste, a little bit too much. But at the same time, it's like I've played a couple of games now with the new Civs, and I have a lot of fun. I haven't tried the campaign yet, but I think the new Civs are pretty fun overall. But yeah, again, like the hero gimmicks and such, it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I have also not played enough with it. And I mean, like the games I played, like the heroes have barely been in play. So it's like, do they really matter that much? But yes, for me, I think the amount of new stuff in this one, please don't do as much next time.
You know what I think? I think it's a combination of 5 new Civs and a ton of new mechanics, a ton of new regional units.
Yeah.
I was thinking for myself, if you're only going to have campaigns for the Three Kingdoms DLC, Civs, maybe release only the Three Kingdoms. But as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, that the Reddit crowd is going to be even more mad because actually the Civs they like the most are the Ketons and the Jurchens. Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is here.
I think for me as well, as a competitive player, the fact that these Civs are dropped on us like a week before Warlords begins, a week and a half, it feels even more abrupt and more extreme. I'm not sure if the general audience feels the same, but I feel like there's not enough time here to identify or discover these civilizations before I'm playing a $70,000 tournament with them. So it's like,
which personally, I think it's great because then there's going to be
from the outside perspective.
Yeah,
it's a bit stressful from professional player perspective.
I understand 100% and can totally see it. But I think I agree. It also depends, where you're coming from. What do you want from Age of Empires 2? Right. Yeah. I personally, care foremost. How do people say it? Most and foremost. It's not most and foremost.
Foremost, most and foremost. I care foremost.
But there's something...
First and foremost.
First and foremost. Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for.
You're welcome.
I care first and foremost for the competitive scene. I want to see it grow. And so when I see a DLC that 100% has grown the base, I'm happy. But yeah, I agree with this part. Too many new mechanics is tough. So I really don't know how to feel about this DLC just yet. I need to see how it plays out in the tournament and all of that, and see how it plays out in the rank ladder and all of that. To have a definitive opinion.
I mean, if we take a couple steps back, right? When Burgundians was released, for example, right, it wasn't crazy amount of new mechanics, right? We've had like introductions with like the conic, where you have like suddenly the dismounted conic, but that doesn't feel like an extreme change.
That
right?
was already crazy, right?
Cool
that was
addition.
Already crazy, yeah.
Yeah, Burgundians with the charge Coustelier.
True.
That felt crazy initially, but like those were pushed out in increments. Like it was just first this, first that. Like it's not like take everything at once.
Yeah,
right?
Very fair point. Very fair point. Yeah. On the other hand, I'm not sure how much people who don't play competitively care about those things.
That's the thing, right? It's about finding the balance. And again, in the end, you cannot please anyone or everyone. Cannot please anyone. That would be sad. You cannot please everyone in this world with pretty much anything. So it's like they gotta find the balance, what they think is the correct and best way to do it, and we're kind of just along for the ride. Of course, we will give input and voice our opinions, but like we will never, whatever we do will not be like, oh, this is now decisive for the direction the game is going. They will look at numbers, they will look at sales, and they will make decisions first and foremost. You like that saying, don't you?
Yeah.
According to the numbers, right? And I mean, competitive scene and streaming and the content part of the community is still relatively small. So I imagine they still view at us with importance as a marketing tool and such, but at the same time, it's like we're still a very small part of the thing, and they're not going to build a game only around competitive.
Yeah, again, I think that's the most important point all of the time. People need to keep this perspective. Okay, having said all of that, how do you feel about the new Civs? Do you like them? I mean, it's a lot of new stuff, as you said, but is it fun to play for you? You think we're going to see a lot of them in Warlords 4, for example?
So, I mean, I'm going to just reveal all my opinions here before the tournament starts here.
Juicy. Nobody listens to this anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I think Ketons are mega broken in the opening. Their pasture economy is just too strong. So, like, they're just, I think 95% of the time they'll be banned. Some people will keep them open, and then accidentally or like coincidentally the other person also keeps them open, and then both people are going to first pick it. So it's a Civ that is crazy good in the opening but falls off late game because they lack unit diversity for late game 1v1. I think the Wu is like an incredibly strong hybrid Civ in particular.
That's the one of the Jian swordsman, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I've already seen Huang try his crazy fast castle Jian swordsman tons of times. He failed a lot of times, but yeah.
I think they will also be mostly banned because of hybrid maps. And Shu is kind of terrible, to be honest. They're
sort of archer Civ, right?
Primarily archer, and they have the War Chariot, which is probably the worst unit in the game. I think they will be a good flank Civ on like an Arabia map, but they're not a great Civ overall.
Did you see Phosphorus video about the unit?
The War Chariot?
Yeah. You didn't see Red Phosphorus video? You need to see it. Apparently the unit is badly bugged right now. It's like
I hope so, because it's horrible.
Yeah. He did a lot of testing, and it makes a lot of sense. So apparently what happens is when you shoot one unit and the unit dies, and I think the unit shoots like 9 arrows or whatever. So when you shoot one unit, and let's say you kill it in 4 arrows, and then you switch targets, you need to wait for the whole reload animation, and you're still only going to shoot another 5. So it's like it reloads, but still finishes the volley before.
That's weird.
And that's definitely not supposed to happen. Apparently, that only came after the patch that fixed the rocket carts, and then it unfixed the War Chariot. We had this before, right? You fix it, you turn on one switch.
But I don't think the damage output is the problem with that. It's how fragile it is as well, right? It's like it's good against range units only. It's equivalent of a Scorpion to a certain extent, right?
It's definitely stronger. He shows what happens when you actually target full HP units that are not likely to die, after the first like 4 or 5 arrows, and then it's very strong. It's a very strong unit,
The cost is 50 food, 90 gold. It's very different cost. It's harder to afford when it's like food cost and gold in general.
That's very expensive. 50,
it is.
90, what?
50 food, 90 gold for a shit unit. I wouldn't pay it myself.
That's 90 gold. That's got to be one of the most expensive in gold terms non-siege units. Probably the most expensive non-siege.
It is a
siege unit. There you go. It's a siege unit. Yeah, fair enough. It doesn't feel like one, right?
It's weird because it costs gold, right?
Yeah.
But it's so fragile. Like one mangonel feels like one taps them. So it's just a unit that doesn't feel good. But that's the Shu. I think they fall a little bit into the blend of like Britons, Ethiopians. You kind of have to play that type of direction. Arbalest, Halberdier. But yeah, they're not great in my opinion. Wei feels like a bit of an in-betweener. It's like if you go untouched, you get a good economy, but you also lack units, I think, in late game.
What are like the main features of the Wei? I don't have it in mind.
When you're doing
now.
Like economy upgrade in the mill, lumber camp, or mining camp, you get 1 villager extra. So like essentially, you could work with 4, 5, 6 extra villas in feudal age, castle age.
Okay.
But yeah, you obviously have to pay for the upgrades to get them. But I feel like you just lack units with some of these civs. So it's like even though you have fairly good start, good opening, you fall off as the game goes on. Yeah. And then the last civ would be the urchins, where they have like 20% faster hitting cavalry. Their livestock don't, or like the hunted meat from sheep, deer doesn't decay, which can be a pretty nice eco bonus, but like that's it. That's where your eco bonus stops. So it's like, okay. And then they also feel like a bit in between. So yeah, I don't think this is people like to say, pay to win DLC, right? No, you pay in some regards to lose if you
pay to lose.
Yeah. And then again, Wu is incredibly good on hybrid maps, maybe the best hybrid map civ. Ketons might be the best land civ on like open Arabia map type of map, just because of how good they are in the opening.
From the 5 ones, you're saying right
in the
now.
whole game.
In the whole game?
Ketons, I think, might be the best. Well, it's not necessarily broken, right? Again, their opening is crazy good, but they fall off in late game. They get double attack from forging. You do forging, you have +2 attack on spear scouts, and you have a crazy food economy behind it. I mean, like on the highest level, that's where you're gonna take proper advantage of it, right? I don't think Ketons are going to feel broken for a 1500. And again,
so condescending. Wow.
Sorry, but it's what it is. Wu probably the best hybrid Civ. And then Dursens, Wei kind of in the middle, and Shu I think is just horrible. They're not the worst Civ in the game, but I think they're pretty bad.
Pretty bad. Okay. Just to touch a tiny little bit on the campaigns. I don't think you're not that much of a campaign player, are you?
I play campaigns because I want to go through them because Age of Empires is my childhood game, right? And also obviously for content's sake. But it's not. I haven't tried the campaigns from the Three Kingdoms yet.
Right. Yeah. So I love watching Warlords play the campaigns. He's very much, let's say, 50-50 on them. He doesn't really like them. He doesn't hate them. And that's also sort of the feeling that I've seen around the community. They're okay. They're not too bad. They don't innovate in the same way that the Chronicles does or anything like that. Okay. But they're okay. They have this new legendary difficulty, which is apparently not legendary at all. Apparently,
it's not tough.
It's not hard at all. That's again from what I hear from watching Warlords play these things. Warlords is a very good player, so I don't know. A campaign player. Let me qualify. A campaign player.
Specified. I mean, when I saw the legendary difficulty, I mean, I want to go and see if I can play the others on legendary. Yeah, and then I was sad because it was only on the new Civ, new DLC.
Oh, that's what I mean. Yeah, no, I was just expecting it to be like really tough, like real. And I'm curious because devs definitely know how to make very tough campaigns. I remember in the Jadwiga scenario, for example, there were a couple of tough scenarios there. Big battles against tons of enemies and all of that.
I used to play campaigns back on HD edition. I did like a whole playthrough, and there I believe they had like the hardest difficulty as well. And their campaigns actually used to be quite challenging there, but for some reason with DE they removed the hardest difficulty, and suddenly it was only hard. And ever since then I haven't found a campaign that I feel like has been a challenge. While in HD edition there were some campaigns where I spent over an hour, right, grinding it out. That's a bit sad for me. I was hoping now the legendary difficulty would be like reintroduction of the hardest thing when it could be like for all the campaigns, but yeah, unfortunately, it was only for the new Civs or the new DLC. So,
from what I heard, is that a lot of the HD I don't know if this is true because I didn't play them. Is that they were grinding, right? And a lot of people don't like that grindy type of stuff, where it's just the AI is just throwing units at you, and that's not very strategic or anything like that. So
I get that, but it was the only way I felt like the campaigns were difficult or like challenging. Well, maybe it's a me thing. Maybe it's a me thing.
Yeah, you might be surprised to learn that you don't represent 99.9% of the player base. Yeah, you might be a bit too skilled for that. Okay, so I'd like to talk about Warlords, of course. We touched on it a little bit when we talked about the Civs for sure. The qualifiers are now complete, and we finally have the names of the 16 players who will play in the main event starting May 18th. That's the upcoming Sunday from the time we publish this episode. So we're going to publish it on Friday, so it's going to be like 2 days from now on. And the names are Hera, Leary, Tato, Viper. Those were the invited players. ACCM, Hart, Sebastian, Yo, Barles, Freaking Andy, MBL, Mihai, Sito, Winchester, DauT, and Jordan. Jordan does beat DauT, but both end up qualifying. Of course, now DauT is not going to feel all too bad about it because he did end up qualifying, but you certainly talked to him a little bit. How was he after he lost to Jordan? How was he feeling?
I was a bit careful in that regard because you never want to, like, in case he was actually upset about it, you don't want to trigger him more. So you always, like, in case of these situations, you're always treading a little bit carefully.
Take baby steps. Yeah.
But I could tell after a day that was okay. Banter is on, so we went ham on him. No, he's obviously knows that he expected that, and the funny thing is as well that Jordan kicked out, and then Jordan didn't qualify himself in that qualifier.
Right, he lost to Andy.
Yeah, and then fortunately they both qualified in the recent one. So yeah, in the end, happy days for both.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw the Guess the Elo video because there was a meme was born. A meme was born in the Guess the Elo, the 1400. Yeah, I recommend folks check that one if they haven't. Okay, so very impressed with Jordan's performance though, Orion.
Yeah,
very impressed.
Dude came back and he beat DauT 3-0 in the first qualifier, and in this one he beat Nikov 3-0. Mm-hmm. Also in Jordan's bracket was a guy that I personally hadn't heard about before, Nias.
I think he's French.
French apparently, and he's apparently good at Black Forest as well, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he made it all the way to the decider match, beating people like Kingstone, Miguel. So very impressed by him as well. But of course, in the end, Jordan showed his experience and superiority in the decided the match, and Jordan very convincing, looking very good, and I mean something just feels right when Jordan is back and included in the scene. Yeah. So it's
if
a nice
I'm
feeling.
not mistaken, Neos has made it to a couple of T90 videos. I might be confusing him with someone, but I know someone told me about this guy. No, dude, wasn't it Fox? It was the Fox guy, the Spirit Attacked. He told me about Neos. That's a name that you need to keep your eyes on. Definitely remember. I don't know if T90 has covered him or not, but so I think he had his eye on him, and if he had kept Fox, maybe he would have taken him. I don't know.
Makes sense.
He definitely told me that it's someone he was looking at, so that's funny to know. But Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's cool just that we still have people show up in these qualifiers and go all the way to the point where
amazing
people like myself, who is so involved in the competitive scene, have never heard of him, right?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Amazing. So good to see. So many new names. I love it. I was the most impressed with Jordan with his mechanics, and specifically in this game against Neos. You could tell that sometimes Neos had wacky strategies, but Jordan was beating him simply by being faster. He was active in more places in the map, and he just couldn't keep up. Just simple mechanics, crazy. And
I mean, Jordan has always been an execution player, right? Yes. Mechanically, as long as he has a decent strategy, he's all about execution. And I mean, I think what kind of helps Jordan, funnily enough, is that he doesn't use the computer for anything else except playing Age of Empires. So it's
in
not like
what way does that help him?
It's like he doesn't go on a computer and play different games if he doesn't play Age of Empires. So he doesn't get bad habits from anything else. When he gets back on the computer, it's like, okay, Age of Empires, this is the only thing I've ever used the computer for.
You think that plays a role? That you get your mechanics mixed up when you're playing other games and stuff like that?
When I've played Warcraft and StarCraft 2 in the past, it definitely has an overlap into I have F1 to delete in AoE 2. In Warcraft 1, you click F1 to select your first hero, which is a very frequent hotkey.
That's the worst possible crossover.
Yeah, so when I played a couple of games after I grinded for Warcraft a couple of weeks ago, I deleted an archer range, I deleted the units nonstop, villagers, it overlaps for sure. So I think, unironically, that type of thing, don't get me wrong, it's better to play Age of Empires than not. But I feel like his mechanics, he doesn't get bad habits from other things, is what I mean.
That's a very interesting point that I'd never heard. Isn't that gone in 2 days? The bad habits?
Not necessarily. I felt it for a couple of days for sure. But Jordan comes back, and I mean, he's a hard worker, right? He puts in the effort, he puts in the time, and he prepares. So he plays a couple of games, gets back into the rhythm, and then the mechanics come very fast for him.
Yeah, I wanted to say a naturally gifted player, but I know that DauT is going to disagree with that, so I better not say it.
DauT called him zero talent again.
Well, you know where he called it?
2 days
yesterday.
ago.
Okay, you know where he called him that the first time?
Was it on this podcast? Or
not in this podcast, but in my interview with him, 3 years ago or whatever it was.
The reason he called him again zero talent is because apparently he struggled so much with the new Civs now again. He was streaming and played with the new Civs, and he struggled, and he lost to Huang and zero talent. Guy doesn't something new Civs, zero talent.
Nearly made a Twitter about it. Are you enjoying? What's something like you're enjoying your comeback, Jordan? And then a picture of him losing to Huang.
Maybe he was doing the Jian Swordsman there even.
I don't think it was, but I'm not sure. I don't think it was the Wu. In any case, so I wanted to explain very quickly the round robin format. So it's 4 groups of 4, and then the 3 first are placed into a single elimination bracket. That means 1 player per group is going to be eliminated after the group stage. The groups are Group A, Hera, Yo, Barles, Andy, Tado, Hart, MBL, Jordan on Group B. Group C, Viper, ACCM, Mihai, DauT. Going to have the chance to face the great DauT again. Group D, Leary, Sebastian, Cito, Vinchester. First of all, do you prefer it like this, or do you prefer it like last time, which was just simple single elimination?
As always, I like variation.
Okay.
It's variation.
Within tournaments too?
Yeah, why not, right?
Okay.
I mean, we had now double elimination with the Garrison. Before that, we had Red Bull, where there was group stage, GSL into knockout. And now we have round robin into knockout. So it's it's variation. I like it. It's a lot of fun.
I prefer single elimination. It's a bit more cutthroat, but on the other hand, I think it's good that the tournament's a little bit longer because then you have more promotion for the finals and all that. So I'm a little bit torn.
The advantage of a round robin is first of all, the disadvantage is that if it's a bigger round robin, the results can be decided before you're done with the round robin.
Right.
But in a group stage like this, I like it because there's always the argument he got knocked out, but maybe he would have beat that guy. right? Now you get a chance to play everyone in the group, so it's not like, oh, you were unlucky in the draw necessarily. So it's just one of those where it's like, it's different, but also fun. And like I said, I like variation.
Quick predictions before we move on and get Chrazini involved. Group A, Hera, Yo, Barles, Andy. I'm calling Andy doesn't make it. What about you?
I think Hera will drop out.
Very brave, very brave.
I mean, Hera's doing a subathon, right? So maybe he doesn't get time to train. It should be between Andy and Barles, right? To get top 3, most likely, historically speaking. But, I think both Andy and Barles are super good players. And Andy has also been part of the Onimaru Brazilian boot camp, right? So he's been training hard.
Onimaru, yeah.
He's been training hard with Leary, Lewis. I think Hart was there. Oh, yeah, Barles, Andy, probably one of them.
Barles, Andy. Group B, Tato, Hart, MBL, Jordan, potentially the group of death. I mean, I love Jordan, but I have to go with Jordan.
I think that is one of the groups where I would probably say any constellation 1 to 4 would be not surprising. I could see any
going
name
out
on each spot, and I would be like, not surprised that the other guy was above him or below him.
Tato number 4. Can you see Tato number 4? I can't.
I mean, MBL has beaten Tato in the past. Hart has beaten Tato. Jordan on a good day can beat Tato. Like, again, it's not totally unheard of, but yeah, obviously you would expect Tato to make it to the top 3, and probably at the moment Jordan, MBL probably would be the guys that would be expected to be fighting for the 3rd spot.
Yeah,
but again, Jordan is also one of those guys that becomes a different beast in tournaments. His mental game is so strong that others also, again, I think people will feel pressure playing Jordan because they'll know, oh, this is the retired guy that just came back. I shouldn't be losing to this guy. And then DauT lost 3-0. Nico lost 3-0. If you have those results, would it really be surprising if you beat a Tato, a Hart? I don't think so.
Yep, very fair. I mean, from this group, what doesn't make sense when you look at it is that MBL is placed in the 3rd pot. I mean, I'm not saying that anything wrong was done here. It's just MBL.
Should have been 4th pot, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying. Yes. Moving on. Group C, Viper, ACCM, Mihai, DauT.
I just want to say, since you brought up the pots, what I found a bit confusing is that, like, I think, okay, the 1st pot should be the invited players. 2nd pot should be the from first qualifier.
Yeah, that's why it was, right?
3rd pot should be, no, it wasn't. DauT was in the 3rd pot. He should have been in the 4th pot because he qualified in the 4th. I think that's what would have made sense, right? Because you earned your pot essentially by qualifying before.
By qualifying earlier, yeah, fair point. Maybe something to improve on for the last time.
Okay, go on. My group.
Yeah, don't run from your group, my friend. Don't run. You're a little bit washed and all of that, but I think you're still going to make it. So I'm going to give... Dude, I don't know. If I say DauT, I mean, he doesn't listen to the podcast. I think, unfortunately, I'm going to go with DauT in this group. Mihai has been training, part of TAG.
You would place Mihai over DauT?
You're
on a Game Legion podcast, right?
I hope DauT's not listening to this. Timon's not listening to this, but
no, I think Mihai is the clear underdog in this group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm happy we have something different for this group. Last group: Leary, Sebastian, Cito, Winchester. I don't know, Winchester or Cito, right? You start this.
You say that right, but then you look at it as well. Like Sebastian lost to Dogao for NEC qualifier. He lost to Kingstone for Garrison qualifier. Like this is also a group that could go in any way, right? But yeah, you would probably say Winchester, Cito, maybe historically speaking, where people kind of have the players right now. Winchester or Cito probably more likely to fight for 3rd, but again, I could see Winchester win that group, right? That's the kind of level we're dealing with here.
Yep.
I think Cito is probably the underdog in that group at the moment.
Okay, cool. All right, so next topic is going to be the maps, but we are not going to be discussing alone. We're going to be bringing Chrazini into the call and discuss with him a little bit about the maps and talk a little bit about his role in the tournament and his role in the Age of Empires 2 community. So stay tuned for that one, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, we're back, and we're now joined by Chrazini. You may know him as the administrator for tournaments like the Red Bull Wololo series and Warlords, but he's also one of the best mapped scripters in the community and is officially part of the Forgotten Empires team. Chrazini, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and welcome to the Town Center.
Thank you very much. What an intro.
Well, thank you. I mean, I hope you're ready for a contentious and fraud interview, bro. I hope you're ready for this. No. I'm kidding. We hate drama over here. At the Town Center podcast, we hate drama. That's not what we're all about.
Titles and topics, never dramatic here.
Yeah, that's not what we're about here. Okay, Chrazini, listen up. So we know we were part of the Forgotten Empires team, but I don't think we know, or at least I don't know, what exactly is your role there. So what do you do for Forgotten Empires? What does like a typical day at work look like for you? I'd be curious to know.
Yes, I mean, I've been part of Forgotten Empires for about 4 years now, I think. And it's been fantastic so far. I'm working as a map designer. So far I've worked on titles like Age of Empires 2 and 4. Those are the two things.
Okay, so you also work for 4. That's interesting. I didn't know.
Indeed, I have.
Okay.
Is it a full-time job?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you have anything to do with like the matchmaking? And no, it's choosing the map pools and all the kind of stuff. Is it something
I certainly have some
of?
influence.
Okay.
But no, it's mostly just map design.
I found the drama. Yeah, go ahead. What's the thought process there like? What kind of maps do you like to choose? Do you get to choose the developer maps and stuff like
that? Sure. I mean, to some degree, I only have some influence. It's not my decision at the end of the day, but I think we just try to create a very diverse map pool, kind of similar to tournaments. Honestly, it's not too different from creating a tournament map pool where we try to pick maps that allow for a diverse set of strategies and play styles.
Can you give some input then on like why so many of the tournament maps are not included in the map pool? Is it just difficult to script it properly, that it works in all formats, or like what's the reason there?
It's just it just takes time and money. I mean, it's having maps in the actual game requires it to work across all the different game modes that the game offers, right? So it's not as easy as taking a tournament map and just pouring it into the game. A lot of the tournament maps we have right now are also quite fixed and only work for the very specific tournament settings that it's created for, right?
Right.
A lot of 1v1 maps are very static with players spawning in very specific positions, and it just doesn't scale very, very well.
Is that something
Those are some issues.
Change going
Certainly.
forward?
Maybe.
Spoiler leaked.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be hit with the NDA card a couple of times here. I'm pretty sure. I'd be curious about something else, Chrazini. So we've noticed, and I think a lot of people have noticed this. Some of the maps that we have now in tournaments, sometimes in the map pool also, were actually old maps that we had like in the Voobly days, but have been renamed. I mean, the obvious case for me here would be Bedouins, for example, which is now what we would call it African Clearing, which is pretty much Bedouins.
4 Lakes is not was Cross, now it's 4 Lakes.
Used to be Cross, 4 Lakes. What's the reason for that? What's the reason for that?
I can't actually speak on that. I don't know. Though I will say, I will say though, I think the previous Bedouins is so much different from the current African Waters that I think a rename is actually perfectly appropriate.
I have you have a special place for Bedouins in my heart because I believe that map was introduced in one of the Nations Cup, which I helped organize, and actually, we had like a map contest, and we got like I don't know how many submissions, but really a lot of submissions. Back in the day, people really loved to submit maps and make crazy maps, and I actually went through all of those maps, all the submissions. It was me; I had to do it all alone. And I'm proud of the fact that I selected Bedouins as the winner of the map contest, So I have a special place in my heart for the Bedouins map.
I think people tend to, like romanticize old maps sometimes. Same as happened with like Arabia. People think back to the good old days where maps used to be different. But if you go back and actually play them, I think a lot of people would realize that maybe it's not as good as I actually remember.
Mm-hmm. Wait, are you saying Saltmarsh wasn't amazing back then?
It's great. It's better now, actually. But people never play it.
Okay, talk about how did you develop this love for map scripting, though? I'd be very interesting to know that as well, because it's something that not a lot of people do, and I think it's something that it's gotten a lot better over the years, despite what we might be hearing every now and then from pro players. And it's just one of those things. In the past, nobody cared about little unfairness in resource distribution, and these days people do care a lot about that. But yeah, how did you get into map scripting? What makes it difficult? What makes it challenging?
I mean, I've always had a passion for being creative and creating stuff for the games I play. Started way back when I was playing Counter-Strike. I started making these environments, these 3D environments for players to run around in. It's such a blast to watch other players play on the things that I've created. So when I started playing Age of Empires, it was just a very natural thing for me to do, to see, okay, what can I do to be creative here? And then I discovered map scripting, and I just loved it, and have loved it ever since. And there's something special still to this day. Watching people play on new maps is just, I get such a kick out of it. It's so fun.
What makes it challenging, in your opinion? Or let's start with this. What makes a good map in your eyes?
A good map is one that allows for a diverse set of strategies. I think that's the short answer.
What
would be different elements.
What would be an example of a good map?
Oof, so many good examples.
Well, take your own. Take your own.
One of my first maps that I created that I think still is great, maybe it's a bit of controversial, is actually African Waters. Which is a bit of a unique one, but I think it just offers action right from the get-go. It's so fun to play. It's so fun to watch. There's so much happening from second one.
Is African Waters the 4 lakes with the 5 rhinos and that stuff?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a solid map. I can confirm. I think so as well.
That would be the example of a good map. What would be the example of a bad map?
Wow.
This would be careful. This would be the title.
No. We already have for the first part a nice time.
A bad map. Well, it's actually not that difficult, I think. A bad map would be a map that, in my opinion, changes game mechanics so that players don't know what to expect. If a deer becomes a boar, or a gold pile has 1,000 gold on it suddenly, changing gameplay elements so players will have to read up on the map beforehand, I think is a bad practice. Something we see a lot. So there's clearly an audience for it. I personally don't like it, and I think that makes for a worse experience.
So you don't want to name names?
I don't want to name any names.
You don't want to name names.
They know who they are. But it's perfectly fair.
I will name names. Okay. I don't remember the name, but I will name like the World Champion Desert Championship thing, the team game tournament we had. There were some maps there where like things had different stats and numbers, and that was very confusing and sometimes frustrating to play.
It can be quite wacky sometimes, and I think people tend to add a lot of gimmicks to a map. I don't mind gimmicks so much if you add one gimmick and sort of focus on that gimmick and try to elevate the map with that gimmick instead of just putting gimmicks in all over the place just for the sake of it.
I can see that.
Yeah, I do hear a lot of times that this map scripting process, again, it's pretty complicated. And I believe that the tools that you guys have are very limited. You can only change a certain amount of metrics and variants and all of those things. So could you talk a little bit about that? What makes map scripting in Age of Empires 2 specifically so difficult? Is it just that the engine limits you too much? There's not too much that you can change?
It's difficult because at the end of the day, this game is still rooted in the 90s, right? And the game was never supposed to be as balanced as it is today.
Okay.
The game tries its very best to create a map that's very things scattered all over the place, not particularly worried about fairness, but we have gotten better tools to ensure that things spawn more appropriately. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very old engine, and it's just a very limited language. It's not even programming. It's just like the simple scripting. It's more like a markup where we set a bunch of restrictions to every object that generates on the map, and it's very limited what we can actually do. That's why you see a lot of maps sort of borrow elements from each other. You said African Waters is just 4 lakes with the sound in the middle, right? We don't have a lot of freedom to create very complex worlds that are very dynamic.
Right. Do you have any examples from when you try to create a map and then like you do something and then something completely wacky happens that you'd never ever expected to happen?
I think it happens all the time.
All the time.
I think it happens all the time. Yeah. We use a bunch of hacks these days. That's also why the maps today have become so difficult to make sure that they generate appropriately, because people use. I mean, we had a map contest in Warlords 4, right? And making sure that all those maps worked as I expected was a challenge, because people use wacky hacks right now, all kinds of weird tricks to generate the maps, and it's so difficult to sort of read through them if you haven't made them yourself.
Do you sometimes see these maps come in, and then when you open the script to look at it, you go like, why did they do it this way and this way rather than...
Certainly, yeah. And everyone has different approaches.
Right. That's cool. That's cool. So it's like its own kind of. Everyone
Very
can have a
much so,
unique
yeah,
style
yeah.
in map scripting as well. Cool.
You can. There's a lot of people that we could easily tell who made this map just by looking at the code.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Is this like the map scripting? Is there a community there that has? Is there like a Discord for map scripters? Like, do you guys know each other by name and say, "Oh, you guys know? Like, oh, he's an up and comer. Oh, he's talented." Or,
I mean, to some degree, yeah. I don't think we're not on first name basis, but we certainly know each other, and we have a Discord where we share ideas and tricks, and people ask for help, and everyone's very willing to help.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing, I don't know if it's actually connected to the map scripting. I assume not, but one thing that I find fascinating is the AI community. Are you guys related in some way, or not necessarily?
Very, very tiny overlap.
Very tiny overlap.
A few questions back and forth sometimes, but it's very rarely, I'd say.
I love those tournaments, when they just pitch AIs against each other and they see who wins. And I find this thought processing of trying to program your AI to, beat that one particular AI because he knows that they like to use this strategy, so I'm going to counter it this way. I find that a thought process amazing and really fun to.
It's super cool. It's a really fun tournaments, actually.
To think about. Do you see this ever getting a little bit easier so that it has a little bit more appeal also to the people like me, for example, who have no clue about programming and all that? Will it ever get a little bit easier, a little bit more intuitive to create maps, or that's pretty much out of the picture at this point?
I tend not to say this because it undermines myself, but it's not difficult to do this. It's very easy to do map scripting. It's not complicated. You don't need a programming degree to do this.
Okay.
You can create some very simple maps with very little knowledge. If you just spend a few hours trying map scripting, you would have a map running just in a few hours. And there, as I said, the Discord would help you out immensely to try and get you there. It's not difficult. I like to pretend it is, so people look up to me. But it's really not at all.
I would then assume that we will be able to get that link and maybe put it in the description for those that might be interested.
Absolutely, yes.
Definitely. People love it.
It becomes more tricky when you start to do more advanced things, right? But the basics of the scripting is very simple.
Okay, cool.
Okay, it's good to know. All right, so not only is map scripting a love of yours, you also love, I don't know if you love it, but you do it a lot of time. You are the administrator for a lot of tournaments. We spoke about the Red Bull Series, Warlords 4. How much work is it ahead of you still for Warlords 4? Is it actually more difficult before the tournament starts? The main event's just coming around in a couple of days? Or does the actual work start once the tournament really starts?
No, the preliminary work is definitely more involved, I think, with the whole creating the rules, creating the format, discussing all kinds of things, deciding the handbook. Whereas when the tournament actually starts, it's more time consuming because I have to be there during every single match during the main event, right, to make sure that I can act on any issues or help any players that might request it.
Mm-hmm. You guys are going to have long days, I assume, right?
Yes.
It's what is it, around robin for 4 groups, and it needs to be done in 1 week or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It doesn't feel that extreme though this time because it's like maximum three games a day, at least during group stage. Yeah. So it's a bit more, and one day has two games.
Mem is getting old, so we're trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, Mem does not feel like he's getting old. The same energy as ever. I love it.
Indeed, yeah.
What would be different about admitting a tournament like Warlords 4 and the Red Bull Series?
Honestly, I mean, admitting is not much different. I treat it very much the same. It's obviously a lot more prestigious to do the Red Bull ones because it's there. We're there in person. But in terms of practices, it's no difference.
So you don't have different directives like from MEMB in terms of how to do things versus like when Red Bull comes around. Do you notice the whole professional scene around Red Bull? Like how suddenly, you're working with a giant company, right? There has to be some differences in terms of how you're guided, I guess. I'm not restricted in that way. The biggest difference, honestly, between the two tournaments is that players act a lot more professionally when it comes to the bigger tournaments. So when it comes to Red Bull, players just do whatever they say. A bit more reserved when it comes to online events.
That's funny, but expected in a way.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It does make sense.
Yeah. Okay, so that does tie nicely to the next part that we wanted very much to talk to you about. I'm not sure, Orion, how much of this is actually spilled through to the rest of the community, because a lot of this discussion that I'm about to talk about is happening pretty much only on Discord, and it's not even like a Discord that a lot of people are in, because it's like MEMS tournament Discord. So in any case, there's been a lot of complaints from the players in particular with regards to the maps, to the new maps that have been introduced in Warlords 4. Warlords 4 is a very particular case because you guys are introducing 7 brand new maps that have never been played before in a tournament. And so the critique that you see from players over and over again is the resources in this map are not balanced. My path to the pond, to the water is 2 tiles. I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, of course, is a little bit longer than my opponent. But the critique is not, it's not as exaggerated as I'm making it out to be right now, but it goes in this direction, that resource distribution is not fair enough and games are being decided by that. You, of course, I've talked to you long before we actually invited you to the podcast, Chrazini. I know you very much have a different opinion here. And I obviously want to involve both of you guys, Viper as the representative for the players and Chrazini as the administrator.
We're at court.
Yeah, we're going to be the judge. So what would you say about that, Chrazini? What can be done? Is there... Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just add more from the player's perspective quickly before we let him defend himself from these atrocious acts. I just have to point out, we also know obviously that map scripting is easy, not easy, and that there has to be RNG elements to Age of Empires, otherwise Age of Empires would not be fun.
Right.
The main complaints that have been from players, again, I don't get to play qualifiers much these days. I just have to point that out. But the main complaints that I've perceived from the players is that the qualifiers, the maps aren't ready for the qualifiers, and then for the main event they're suddenly ready because they don't get tested enough before the qualifiers. That's where I've seen the majority of the complaints. And it can be such a tiny thing in the center that is supposed to be elevation, and the elevation is more towards one player, right? And that's such a tiny detail on the grand scheme of things, but for the game itself, it can have a massive impact. So yeah, it can be the most tiny detail. And yeah, players are frustrating. It's frustrating, obviously, for players when that has negative impact for their game specifically. And yeah, I know... For example, Nico has been a bit unlucky sometimes and multiple times in a row as well. So then obviously it becomes frustrating. And that's pretty much where the gist of it is for players. But again, players do understand that there needs to be RNG elements. And that's the only way the game remains fun and interesting. And that is not easy. We understand it. But sometimes it's obviously a little bit frustrating.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
I actually want to preface by saying I watched the previous podcast where you.
Thank you.
Where I watched some of it. I'm a busy.
Did you leave a like?
Yeah. Did you leave a like and subscribe?
Oh,
wow. Are you subscribed to the channel, Chrazini?
I'm quite certain I'm subscribed.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Perfect. You can go on. You may proceed. You may proceed.
I may proceed. Thank you. And I watched Viper's comment, and you said it's not the player's responsibility to test the maps. And I just want to say that I very much agree with you. I don't think it's the player's responsibility to test the maps. But I do think it's in your best interest to do so.
That is true.
I think Warlords 4 had a few too many map bugs on release, and when I say that, I mean literal bugs. So I think one map didn't have the houses generate, another map didn't have the starting resources appropriately deducted from the player's stockpile. But those are objective bugs that everyone can agree on. Those are just wrong. But what we've been facing most in this tournament is sort of map imbalances, and I think it's two different things, because map imbalances are not generally, I would not consider them bugged, because these maps were fine in our eyes when we released them. So I think it's so important that if players do not agree with this sort of, to what point we accept the level of randomness in the maps, then they would have to speak up so we can adjust it accordingly.
Which makes sense. The issue here is just that a lot of players start practicing for the qualifier the week before. And also the maps were released, I think, just a week or two before the qualifier started, no?
Yeah. I underestimated the time it would take to adjust the maps from... We had a community vote, first of all, introducing 7 new maps that needed to be adjusted. Then we had the map contest that also had a bunch of new maps. And I severely underestimated the amount of time it would take to... I think it's the first time we've ever done this, by the way. And it was tricky. As I said, people use all kinds of wacky hacks these days, these scripts. It was so tough to sort of make sure that they generate the way intended. I generally, when I make map packs, I make them all the way from scratch every time. So I know exactly how they generate every time. And we just couldn't do that here. So it did present a few more bugs. I say bugs. I don't think they had that many bugs. I think it had things where we might disagree on what's accepted on a random map.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask just a follow up there? Like, let's say you make a map from start to finish. How long do you roughly spend? How much time?
It depends what it's made for. If it's just a tournament that's that just have to work for that tournament setting.
Let's say it's a completely new map that has never been played before, and you want to make a new map. How much time would you roughly need, you think? So it is very time consuming.
Depends on it could be a day or it could be several weeks.
Okay.
Depending on the complexity of the map, or just
and if you're
brainstorming it, designing it.
And if you're balancing Arabia for Warlords, how much time does that take ish?
Well, balancing Arabia, that's a pretty standardized map at this point. It doesn't require that much testing, I'm afraid.
So that would be a quick one, yeah.
That would be a quick one, yeah.
All right, carry on with the drama, Nelson.
Carry the drama. Okay, so one thing I'd be curious, though, if you do admit that there were more bugs than you were expecting it to be, what can be made there? Just start a little bit earlier, give yourself a little bit more time for give yourself maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the map contest is over until the qualifiers start. Would that be a reasonable expectation to have in a future tournament?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I definitely want to give myself more time to make sure that the maps are up to par and up to the standard that we usually have. But then again, I don't think the maps were that broken. The few issues we had, there were literal bugs we fixed quite quickly, and then what was remaining was all these discussions of imbalance that I think is really fascinating, because it's something that's been brought up quite recently. It's something that didn't really tend to happen in the past. Some of the maps we use in Warlords are the same maps, pretty much the same version almost, as the one we used just 2 years ago. And back then, these issues were not present. So it's quite interesting how things have evolved. And suddenly these things that were perfectly fine before are now completely game breaking.
I mean, just on that, it could be just that some unlucky generations, right, where it means more or less depending on the game. So there's that as well.
I agree 100% with you, Chrazini. I don't think anyone can dispute that there's been a shift in trend in how acceptable maps are for players. You know, and when you speak about unfairness, again, if I go back to the old days, nobody cared if my starting island has, 2,000 more wood than my opponent. Nobody would care about that. And these days, if it's 100 more resources, you will hear complaints. And I'm not trying to criticize. It just goes to show how professionalized the game has become. I mean, it's $70,000 that are now on the line. Of course, I understand players want fairness. They don't want these things to decide games. On the other hand, I think everybody would also accept that that's what makes Age of Empires 2 beautiful. That's the beauty of Age of Empires 2, that randomness can decide a game, and you need to fight against the unfairness of the map generation. So I do wonder, you, Orion, how do you see this? What's the limit for this? I mean, do you fear that you and your colleagues at some point will be asking for mirrored maps? I know I'm exaggerating, but I know where I'm going with this. What's the limit that you guys are willing to accept and say, okay, this is unfair, but it's Age of Empires 2. I have to accept it.
Like, I think for us is like, okay, let's say I have all 3 of my golds forward on Arabia. It's like, okay, shit happens, right? I can adapt. But if also my bears are forward and also my wood is forward, and then my opponent's map has like gold in the back, bear in the back, wood in the back, that's where you just feel like, okay, this is just unfair.
Okay, right? For example, as a viewer, I find that perfectly acceptable. That you have a map that bad. Well, I know. I find it perfectly acceptable because in theory, you can do something about that, right? In theory. I know it's a huge advantage.
In theory, you can do something. Like, you can always adapt, right? There's a simple question. Oh, right. You got a bad map. Well, just adapt. Just play aggressive or instead, right? But
there you go.
Certain styles are harder to execute and pull off than others, right? And certain maps are easier to defend to defend as well against aggression. So it's not that simple, right? And at our level, it's the tiny details can matter so much. Like, just a Civ advantage can put a game in your favor, right? So a map advantage can definitely be the same. Even if you have like your starting bears being forward and your golden wood is in the back, if you're going for a food opening build, that bears being forward could punish you a lot, right? So it's not as simple as being like, oh yeah, you can adapt. It can definitely mess with your complete approach to the game or give your opponent an easy target. Again, like, I agree that there has to be RNG in the game. It's just when just like Nikov, for example, and I know I'm using Nikov as the example here, but there was a map, the one with all the hunt in the center, Skukuza, I think it is called in Warlords, where he pretty much felt like he didn't have berries in the back of his base, which there should usually be berries in that area. And he had apparently prepared a build with berries in the back of the base, which he had every time you played in training. So when that thing happened, right, it obviously completely throws you off as well. And it can get quite frustrating on a mental level as well.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, like if I have a gold forward and berries forward, as long as I have wood in the back, I feel like, okay, I can work with this. But then if I scout my opponent's map and he has everything safe, it's like it still feels unfair, but that is still acceptable.
But at what point does it become a quote-unquote bugged map then? How many resources or other things
I don't want to call bugged is the wrong term, right?
Yeah, right now it's not bugged.
It's
just unfair.
So
would you consider that an acceptable map, Chrazini, when you have all your resources forward, but actually everything generated as it was supposed to be?
Well, I don't think that can actually happen on most of the maps, but
okay, well, there you go.
I mean, I also have a different perspective because because I know how the maps are scripted generally. I look at the map scripts and I say, did everything generate according to the script? And if everything did that, then it's technically fine. But there's obviously the other perspective as looking at the actual map and say, okay, everything's forward. This is a fair map. But generally, I would say that's perfectly fine.
For me, it's more things like, let's say, African waters. Like, I know that's probably more hardcore, but imagine I spawn 20 tiles closer to the water than my opponent. Or Baltic is a good example. I have water 10 tiles away from my town center. My opponent has 30 tiles. That is super unfair. Just like to have such an advantage for free is just kind of annoying. Or in the current map, Basmo, for example, there was one game I casted Jordan against Sorakuma. The elevation in the center was just heavily geared or like towards Jordan. There was essentially like for Sorakuma, it's like he's running uphill all the way until Jordan's base, kind of. And then it's like, okay, that's to me is like, okay, he just has a game-winning advantage for free from the start of the game. Those are the maps where I feel like it's probably a little bit too unfair. Even though for a viewer, you might not notice it. Oh, he has more elevation on his side of the half. But as a player, it's like, oh, this is a massive advantage for me.
I think as a viewer, an underdog story is amazing. Wow, this map, all the odds are against him. He has to fight against the odds. That's
and then he loses in 12 minutes and he's like, oh.
Well, when that happens, it's shit, of course. But when you do win, it provides for those kinds of opportunities too.
I think it's also just different between tournaments, right? We Memp and the team probably lean more towards the more random aspects of the game, where other tournaments might not. And I think people take those experiences from other tournaments and bring them to us and sort of expect the same thing, where we just might not agree entirely on their approaches.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah,
and I think they also just have to maybe accept to some degree that our maps are a bit more random. Like, I still want to find a common ground that everyone's happy with, but it might still lean more towards a bit more randomness. And it's a slippery slope. I mean, if we start giving restarts for bad maps, where do we draw the line? It's so tricky. That's why I'm very careful doing it, because I think it's very, very dangerous to do so.
I missed the old Land Nomad tournament with one restart per map for both teams.
Dude, one restart? That was the updated rules. At some point, it was like 3 restarts for a best of 9 or something like that. Don't you remember that?
I'm saying one restart per map. So game 1, both teams had one restart each.
Oh, per
game
map.
2, both teams had one restart each. And Land Nomad, you know how many bad starts you had there? Dude, you spent so many hours.
Those were the days.
The problem is, people use that as a way to do risky strategies early on, and once it failed, they just restart. Yeah. Oh, I didn't name the board. Restart.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a very fair point. Now that I think of it, maps were a lot more imbalanced back in the days, but we had a lot more restarts, and that did allow us to balance things a little bit here. Okay, Chrazini, we're about to let you go. I just very quickly, Warlords tournament is about to start. Are you nervous for it? What would you consider? What would make you happy with Warlords in terms of how you feel about it being good or bad?
If you get a bunch of good games and no drama, I'd be a very happy man.
Good luck with that.
Good luck.
It centers around me, despite me not liking it at all. I'm actually quite conflict shy. I don't know the English term for it, but I don't like conflicts.
It's a Scandinavian thing.
Yeah, but it tends to follow me for some reason.
It tends to follow you everywhere.
Not everywhere. Most Age of Empires.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Chrazini, thank you so much for taking the time. I wish you and the whole team a lot of success at the tournament. I'm incredibly excited about it with all the new Civs and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to it. And thanks for taking the time, Chrazini.
Of course. Thank you.
If you guys enjoyed the podcast, you know what you have to do. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all those things. And we'll be back in roughly 2 weeks. See you, everybody.